And we are back. Very many thanks for choosing to stay with us. Right about now, it's time for the long-awaited Gold Conversation. And we have the distinct honor of being joined by Charlene Ruto, who is the founder and patron of SMARCS Foundation. We also do have with us Anita Soina, who's the founder of the Soina Foundation. And also we do have Brian Maina, who is the founder and CSO, Eco Rafiki Africa. Thank you so very much for making time, being with us today to talk about all matters climate. We are ready to take it all in, all right? So just to start with you, Charlene Ruto, besides being Charlene, you also wear the title Mama Bees very passionately, and you're also a farmer, and you're very active when it comes to fighting for the climate. Please give us more insight on what motivated you to get into that space as a young person.
Thank you so much for having us on this show. I've been watching this show regularly every now and then, and I really like the content. And I think for me, I've come from an agricultural background. I've always grown up knowing about the farm life. I joke to people that every Easter and Christmas, my parents would insist, lazima tuende ushago. And at that time, I didn't appreciate it. I didn't want to go. But now, like 20-something years later, I totally appreciate that seed that was planted at that time. So on our farm, we started doing beekeeping, but more for pollination services, because the farm was so vast. And actually, when you have bees on your farm, it increases your production by 30%. But as I looked at it, I started looking at it from an agribusiness perspective. This was about a year ago. And I realized the potential that beekeeping has even as a business, and as well the community initiatives that can come from it. Because once I became serious about my beekeeping, I realized I need to talk to my neighbors so that we all have the same practices, we are all doing the same things to encourage a good environment for our bees to thrive. So that's why I became so passionate about beekeeping and the whole farming.
Now that you deeply understand the importance of beekeeping, are you trying to create more awareness because it's a space that has not fully been ventured into?
Yes, I must say there are a lot of still challenges, potholes when it comes to the beekeeping industry. Quite an amount of our honey in Kenya has been banned from some countries because of the level of pesticide in our honey. So that reduces the market for our beekeepers. And so there's so many challenges, but what we're doing, especially through SMARCS Foundation, so I look at beekeeping as a business, but I also look at it as a community initiative. And so through SMARCS Foundation, we're doing more beekeeping training because we have a lot of indigenous beekeepers. They do beekeeping so well. Because the thing with beekeeping, even if you do it as a business, you have to first love the bees. Like ever since I started doing beekeeping, anywhere I see a plant, I can easily identify the bees that are visiting that plant or that flower to get nectar or pollen. So once you have the love for bees, then you're able to develop quickly into seeing what are the different avenues. So there's the beekeeping training, there's constructing beehives as well. There are people in Kenya who even do pollination services. So I could take my bees, my hives from where I put them and transport them to a farm that actually needs pollination services, and that alone is another avenue of business for beekeeping.
All right. Thank you so very much for that. Now moving to you, Anita, you're very passionate on conversations that have to do with climate, SDGs, and you also recently received your award from Arusha when it comes to environment conservation, so good job on that. Maybe you can tell us, as a young person who's been very passionate and at the forefront for fighting for our climate, what are some of the challenges that you face?
So one thing I can say is that before we speak about the challenges, it's good to say that there are good opportunities in this space. And when I got to this space, I was just doing it. I was just planting trees and feeling good about it. I planted trees with my friends today. I'm back to the hostel and I think I'm happy. But then with time, it came with its own opportunities. But one thing I can say, as someone who focuses more on advocacy, the challenge is usually getting the target audience, which in this case is the community members and the young people. And you realize that the tough language of conservation itself is not really friendly. So we have to make sure that we are putting the language in a simple way and in an appealing way that, and just what Charlene does with farming, telling people that ukulima si ushamba, you know, it's the same thing with conservation. You have to find the best way for people to understand how they can join the space. Another thing is most of the time, I mean, we have not been made to love this from a young age for conservation. So it's hard when you finding a youth who's already older to understand, so what's in for me? Sometimes you tell somebody I do it out of passion, not because I get paid out of it, but for them it's what's in for me. So I can say that's one of the biggest challenges, but there are equally there are opportunities in this space.
All right, we'll be getting into the opportunities shortly, but just to move to Brian, the only gentleman on our set today. How are you doing?
Doing good, thank you.
You feel good?
Thank you for having me.
All right, now there's someone who's watching us right now and wants to get a hang of this conversation when we're talking about climate change and sustainability. Being someone who's very heavily invested in that space, please make it clear for them on what we are talking about when it comes to moving to a cleaner and green environment and also sustainability.
Oh, thank you so much. And again, thank you for having me. I think the conversation we're having is very timely, noting that we are having a discussion on one, SDGs, but also looking into what are these SDGs and why climate change per se. Climate change has been one of those discourses that we as young people have not had a chance to purely get into, understand, and I think that also the terminologies being used are quite heavy on the younger generation and also to the older generation. And so why is it important for we as young people to be here? One is because we are trying to transition completely as a continent, as a global sphere. We are looking at how then do we move from these old ways of doing things and purely transition to sustainable ways of making sure that the livelihoods of our people are impacted. And how then do we do this? We make very good, simple examples of saying, why do we want clean air? Is because the only way we can achieve it is by, one, introducing renewable energy, right? So we want to make sure that our people understand what are the effects of solar power, what are the effects of wind power. Also, some other effects that could also happen into our day-to-day activities. One of them is how we use our waste. So it's very important for us to reduce the amount of waste we're bringing into the society, but also minimizing the production rates. And by doing that, what we're trying to encourage people is to make sure that as you go into these productions, can we create alternatives to these waste that exist? One, being plastic. How then do we come up with innovative solutions such as what I'm doing, creating tableware that's made out of leaves to make sure that we are now removing the plastics that exist. And the last one is more or less, I would like to encourage the young people. You know, it's a space whereby you could get avenues to grow. And I like what Anita has said, when we speak about challenges, let's also speak about the opportunities that exist. We do understand there is fragmentation in terms of how we as young people, but also CSOs. You know, I hear people say the young people are not united. But then the question is the civil society united as well? No, we are not. So let's find ways to build engagement, but this is one of those avenues. Advocacy turns out to be how we push the change.
Thank you for that explanation. Now, something I've picked from Anita and Brian as well is that there's need to make this information digestible, especially to the younger generation, so they understand what we're talking about when it comes to climate change effects and sustainability. Now, Charlene, I've seen you work with a lot of schools and visit a lot of schools as well. What efforts are you putting in place to make sure that as you relay the message, it's in a digestible format for them?
I actually totally agree with what Brian is saying. The climate conversation, even till now, is still happening at a very high level. And we were at COP28 with both Anita and Brian. And something that immediately came to my mind is we need young people to start and continue attending these international platforms, because the more we are, the more we can fight for our space, the more we can fight for even our rural youth, because those are the ones who are most affected. Most of the schools I go to are in the rural areas. And yes, the kids understand the basics of tree planting, but now can we move the conversation, not just to tree planting, but tree growing? Because the percentage of the trees that survive after we do tree planting is less than 40%. And actually for this to be there for the next generations, we need to get more into tree growing. And something I like to say is, I say young people and not youth, because for us to have real impact, we must begin infecting the mindsets of young people from a very young age, that is from the age of 10 years and above. So I think if we, as young people, we engage from all levels. Brian does the same, Anita does the same, I do the same. We don't just attend international forums or local forums. We actually go to the grassroots and we do the tree growing, we do the different activities with the young people, we do a lot of knowledge engagement. So if we cut across the whole spectrum, I think that's when we'll really have massive impact.
All right. Now you've talked about something very important, which is tree growing. Now in November 13th, 2023, we did have the National Tree Planting Holiday, and we do have a target of about 15 billion trees by 2032. Anita, I'd like to ask you this question. How feasible is that target? And also, what more can we do to make sure that we hasten the climb towards that goal?
I mean, first of all, to just appreciate that currently we have political goodwill when it comes to climate. And even just before we had the National Tree Planting Day, immediately immediately we had the government, I remember the president and the CS, that is Soipan, talking to people that there are certificates for people to plant trees. I personally got a lot of messages from people telling me, nimepanda miti, nitafutie hiyo certificate yangu. Just try and find my certificate somewhere. And so for me, this is, that showed that people are really going to do it just because it's coming from the top. That let's do this, so they will do it. So number one, that is very great because we have moved from a point of just relaxing and not planting at all to a point of planting. Now from that planting is where we pick up to start discussing the growth. If you looked at the statistics of the trees that were planted during that day alone, if we had that every month, for example, we'd have more trees. And remember, in this scenario, most young people who own tree nurseries came out in large numbers, donated trees, some sold, and all that. So I can say this is something very good. It also encourages the people in the space, because one thing I've realized, like one of the challenges that people who own nurseries, for example, face is that maybe they don't have market. But with the introduction of these days, then jobs, green jobs are being created. So yeah, So we're taking a break right now, but Brad, maybe you can just give me a figure. How many trees did you manage to plant during the National Tree Planting Holiday?
Oh, wow, I did about 100.
Great.
That's with my family.
Good job. All right, so for now, we are taking a short commercial break, but when we come back, we'd like to find out how are we involving the marginalized communities and also people with disabilities in this conversation on climate change. Do stick around for that. See you after the break.
Ni yangu, ni yako, misitu na wanyama pori, ni wetu. Tutunze ardhi yetu, tutunze ndege wetu, na bahari zetu. Ungana na KWS, tunza mali yako. Jione, mbuga zetu na urithi wetu. Nimejaribu mafuta na sabuni nyingi, hazikusaidia kurelieve eczema, dryness, or my baby's sensitive skin. Tangu nigundue the new Nice and Lovely Baby Naturals wash, ni soothing during bath time na haiwashi macho. Ngozi imebadilika kabisa. Thanks to Nice and Lovely Baby Naturals Jelly and Cream. Jionee mwenyewe, the power of 3-in-1 Jelly and Cream moisturizes, protects, and repairs. Chagua Nice and Lovely Baby Naturals, approved by pediatricians and dermatologists.
Iconic Redmi Note 13 series featuring ultra clear 200 megapixel camera with iOS, 1.5K, 120 Hz AMOLED curved display, IP68 dust and water resistance, and more iconic features. Save the date, 10th February 2024.
And the findings are appalling. We find that almost over 1 trillion shillings was spent irregularly.
Takriban shilingi bilioni 600 zilitumiwa na serikali bila idhini ya bunge, asema mkaguzi mkuu wa hesabu za serikali.
This bill does not concern counties. I think we'll be cheating ourselves to say that the bill does not concern counties.
Mwanasheria mkuu alilaumu bunge kwa kuharamishwa kwa ushuru wa nyumba za bei nafuu, akisema hakuhusishwa. Mahakama yasitisha ulipaji wa karo kupitia mtandao wa eCitizen, rais akisitiza malipo yote yatafanywa kidijitali. Kwenye makala ya wiki ya kilimo biashara tunaangazia kilimo cha mtama kwa matumizi ya nyumbani ya biashara.
Valentine Day is around the corner. So, is love in the air? something is amiss. This Valentine Day, is love in crisis? This Saturday, Citizen TV and the Nkoroi Catholic Parish partner to bring you a special pre-Valentine Day heart-to-heart conversation. Love in Crisis, Mapenzi Matatani. Live from Nkoroi Catholic at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Saturday, the 10th of February with Lulu Hassan, Rashid Abdallah and Victoria Rubadiri.
This is the best serum I've ever used.
9 out of 10 agree Garnier Even and Matte Vitamin C Serum is the best they've used. Our highest concentration of derm actives.
Made my skin tone more even. Brightens up my skin with an instant glow.
Bye-bye, dark marks. Even and Matte Vitamin C Serum. 9 out of 10 agree it's the best serum they've used. By Garnier, naturally.
Beef samosas. Make the samosa filling to your liking. Ensure it's dry so that it doesn't soak up the pockets. Mix the flour with warm water to make dough. Fold and seal pockets with a paste of flour and water. Fill in the mincemeat. Heat oil and fry both sides until golden brown. Drain in paper towel and serve.
It's a community event, so people have to eat and have their bellies full. You know, you have bragging rights in the hood. I'm like, my guy won the game.
Stand a chance ya kuwin amazing prizes. Tembelea duka zetu for more info. T's and C's apply.
There's a glass and a half in everyone.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Now, continuing with our conversation on moving to a cleaner and greener environment right here in studio with Charlene Ruto, Anita Soin, and Brian Maina. We left it at inclusivity, making sure that persons with disability are also included in the conversation on how we can save our planet. Charlene, you're very passionate about persons with disability. Tell us how you're making that work.
I really came to interact with the whole community of PWDs a while ago, and I developed a very deep passion for especially the deaf community. And this week I'll be going to Beru, and one of the schools I'll be going to is Kaga School for the Deaf. So when I reached out to the deaf community, they told me their main problem is communication. And I actually feel so bad because I forgot to call you and tell you for this session there must be a sign language interpreter. I completely forgot to tell you. So after this I have to do this all again in sign language and send to the deaf community, because you see they've missed out on all this information, this powerful information that we've shared today. And that's something that we need to advocate for them. So even as we're going to the school, we're going to do a lot of tree planting together. We have about 1,000 tree seedlings we're ferrying to Meru so that we can plant with the kids. And this is part of the education, empowerment and outreach we want to do for our young PWDs. Today's show earlier, I saw that it had a PWD, and you can see how he's already doing so well. And the PWD community, especially our young PWDs, they're so resilient. They just need that opportunity. And I really want to point out, when we had the Africa Climate Summit last year, the Africa Youth Climate Assembly, they had a document that they presented as the young people of Africa and of Kenya to the Africa Climate Secretariat. And one of the clauses there was about inclusivity of our young PWDs, because today if there's a climate emergency, you and I may be able to escape, but somebody who's on a wheelchair, how will they do it? It will take them so much more effort, and it's a crisis, so we're all running. Nobody is able to help this person. If it's a blind person, how do they find their way? If it's a deaf person, how do they know where the danger is to avoid it? So we really need to include our young PWDs in this conversation.
All right, great. Now, moving to you, Brian, you and also every other person in this panel has had the privilege of attending the international summits where the focus is on climate. Now, once you get there and you pitch your great ideas as a young person and you hear all these amazing promises that they make on making things better, once you come back home, how do you do the follow-up to make sure that, yes, all those promises that were made are now being implemented and we are still part of the cake?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that question. I'd like to start by emphasizing the need of one, Anita mentioned that we have gotten an advantage of working with a government that's willing to advocate for young people. I'll give a good case study of yesterday having an event happening today. I just called up the PS and said, hey, I would want you to attend this event. And he showed up and he did a keynote speech. And what I'm trying to say is that what we do through these avenues is that we go to these conferences, we advocate for young people, but we also meet activists there. And there's a need for us to bring them all on board. So the one thing that we've done coming back home is that we are creating avenues, a safe space for them to collaborate. It's very key for us to make sure that we're bringing people from different networks to sit down and have this discourse. The other thing that we're also looking into that's very key, and I like what my sister is doing, is social entrepreneurship. Because if young people go there and fight for policies that they don't purely understand, if they come back home and don't try and see how best do I make this a green job, then we lose the point. We are speaking about how do we mitigate some of these climate challenges and how do we also adapt to them. Right? And so I love what she's doing with climate, with the bees. I love what Anita is doing with advocacy. And so there's a need for us to bring people who are now pushing for collaboration, people who are bringing different networks on board. Social entrepreneurship is very key for us to move this cause further, but also now engaging with policymakers. If there's one thing that we'd be very fortunate about is that our policymakers are at our door and at our will. And so what we do is that we sit down with them, we deliberate on some of these discourses, and one of the initiatives that we're working on right now is called the Climate Dictionary. And what we're trying to do that is to disseminate these terminologies that are used there, and we're going to be distributing more than 30,000 copies in the coming months to schools across the country. Why do we want to do this? Because we want everyone to have an understanding of climate issues, be it PWDs, be it marginalized communities, and be it those who people we tend to look at and say they don't understand what you're speaking about. So it's an issue of us breaking down the language and making sure that everyone is on board.
All right. Anita, you've also been part of this international summit and you have represented us so well. Please tell us, what are some of the great things that you have seen happen in that space after you as a young person, you've gone there, you've pitched your idea, you've talked about our country and the great plans that you have for us. Tell us some of the good opportunities that has come out of it.
I think the most important thing is as we leave this country and go to other countries for such conferences, we always know that if we had a chance to take everybody, we'd have done it. So we have the responsibility of the people, the communities we represent, the people that we work with, the people that we speak for. So with that in mind, when going there, you know that you have to also find opportunities for them. So it doesn't just stop at going to follow up on what has been pledged, but this is one moment where you have a chance to meet the who is who in the space. This is a chance for you to meet funders for your projects. This is a chance for you to, so showcasing the work that we do back at home together with the communities that we do back at home, we make sure that at least when we come back, if possible, we can have some support for the rural projects that they do. But also another thing is that our own country also have their own meetings from the government side. We attend these meetings, we listen to what they say. For example, I've attended meetings with other boards and you hear that we do this in Kajiado. I come back and say, I heard you say that you do this in Kajiado, but I really don't see it, you know. So I think it's one of the best avenues where we also get to understand our country better because we get a chance to attend some of these high-level panels and to hear the commitments that our own country has before we start asking what are other people doing. And what the youths are doing in such spaces is that youths are activists as well. And most of the times you realize that the outcome of conferences like COP, the loss and damage finance and all that are influenced by CSOs. And in most of these cases, young people are part of those CSOs. You'll find young people striking, young people demanding for increase maybe in adaptation funds and all that. And these things do happen. So we add the voices as young people and we make things happen.
Right.
Can I just interject? Because there's something so powerful Anita has said. And I think through our organizations here, if maybe we were to employ as many young people as possible, because I cannot tell you the amount of CVs on my desk and the requests for jobs. Maybe we'd employ 3,000 young people. It's a drop in the ocean. We are 70% of a 50 million population in Kenya. And so the best thing we can do for our young people is create the opportunities for them, the network. And I'd really like to call on our young people. Let's not sit and be lazy. You're passionate about something. Don't give up on that. Reach out to us. Give us your idea. Tell us this is what I want to do. I give a listening ear to somebody who has already started something and I can see where they are going and I can easily put something in, other than somebody who's like, give me a job. Which job? Where am I going to get the job from? But if you tell me, I'm passionate about tree planting, I'm passionate about beekeeping, could you come visit my farm? Could you help me get a piece of land somewhere I want to expand? These are the young people we are going to give a listening ear to.
Now that they know that you want to see the brilliant ideas that they have, how do they get to you?
My social media platforms would be the best way.
Because I'm sure your DMs are packed.
They are packed, but I try and take time to read them, and I have a social media manager who helps me. And I think it's the same for all of us. And I also have a website, charleneruto.com. We have an email address. We get so many requests, and they're actually those that we're able to go and visit them and see how we can support them. And where we can't, we connect them. The connection and the network is what is most important in this space, especially in our space of climate.
Maybe just to quickly piggyback on that Sharina has said, and Anita, we need to find an avenue whereby even the people who have these jobs already, we are speaking about the companies that exist, we need now to start connecting those companies and TVETs. Why are we saying this? Because TVETs produce and release young students and young, energetic, innovative minds every year. We're speaking about millions of young people graduating in Kenya every year. But why are they lacking jobs? Is because jobs are not communicating to these schools. We need to understand what's a job market and what's a job gap. So if Safaricom has a sustainable office, they need to communicate to a TVET and say that this is what's missing, and so that TVET now can start actualizing and making sure that these young people are well nurtured to take up those jobs in Safaricom.
Right, absolutely brilliant ideas coming out of this conversation.
Can I say one last thing?
Yes, you may.
Maybe I just want to call upon everybody who has opportunities, who have the luxury of smartphones to access opportunities and all that, that we may have all that, but we may not be doing much as compared to people in the rural areas. Let's reach out to them, let's support them, let's give them the platform. Yes.
Now, when Anita, you were speaking previously, you mentioned something about the rural communities, and that brings out the conversation on, is there a challenge when it comes to the communities where they speak the local dialect, and we need to get through them and talk to them about conservation and agriculture and sustainability? How are you able to face the challenge of language barrier?
I think already there's a job opportunity for someone. There's a young person who understands maybe Kiswahili or English and the local language. So can they come in and pitch themselves as, I can be a translator or an interpreter, so that the people get the right information. So I think that's really one of the best ways that we can do it. And I think something that also Anita has really talked about in regards to the climate space is how, as young people, we can come in and get the green jobs, the green opportunities, and we should not wait for someone to identify them for us. We should identify for ourselves. Create your own rate card. Once you've shown that you have value, somebody is going to buy into that value.
Now, having been in that space for quite some time, Brad, maybe you can tell us, what is the trend looking like right now? Are we seeing more young people participating in this conversations? Are they bringing forth their innovative ideas? What is it looking like when we talk about the young people and conversations on sustainability?
Thank you for choosing me to answer that question, because I'm very passionate about young people, and I've attended a few COPs so far. And what's really promising is that when I started going to my first COP, I remember we were about just 20 young people. And take a step now, and last COP, we were speaking to more than, I think, thousands of young people as activists and advocates. And what's really beautiful is that they're not coming to the table to beg. Yeah, they're coming there with solutions, you know? And something else that I've taken home from these conversations is that young people now have gotten to a point whereby they're sitting down with policymakers and saying, this is the challenge you're facing as a government. These are the national determined contributions that you're looking to achieve. This is the agenda of the government and the manifesto. This is what I'm going to bring to the table. And what I'm proud about young people going forward is that we will continue providing those opportunities. We will continue making sure that you attend those conferences. We will find avenues to even get you funded. But we want you, as Sharina has said, start somewhere, come with an idea. We are happy to support an idea as far as it makes a very sustainable and backable solution to us.
All right, now as we wind up, Anita, maybe now you can take this opportunity to talk to the young person out there and maybe shed more light on why it's very important for them to be part of this conversation in less than a minute.
I mean, right now, the climate change effects are already forcing people to join the conversation, but that's not a good way. But I'd say that to every young person out there, this is about our present. It's not really about our future. And so you just need to add your voice to it. we don't need one person to do a million things. We need millions and millions of us as young people to do the little that we can where we are. And as my t-shirt says, you have to be the change you want to see in the world. Yeah.
Great. Charlene, in 30 seconds, as we wind up this amazing conversation, you have this campaign that you're very passionate about, 30 Things. And I've seen you talk about it on your social media platforms. In very few seconds, tell us what that is all about.
The 30 Things came from the young people, because when I realized I want to work with young people, I didn't want to put out exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to hear from them, what would you like me to champion for you as a youth champion? And so with my team, I wrote it on my social media pages, we went through it with all my team, and we picked the 30 most outstanding things. And I want to shock you that the most repeated item, it was not finances, it was not even climate, it was mentorship. And I think that's a big part of what we need in this conversation. Brian and Anita will tell you, because they were in this fight way before I was, they probably fought alone. The mentors were not there. They are the ones now who have become the mentors. So really, if we can achieve mentorship, even in the climate space, then we'd have really gone far.
Great. Now, you have 30 things that you're passionate about. We'll make it 31, and the 31 thing will be Kenya's Gold. You're passionate about Kenya's Gold, right?
Well received.
Thank you so very much. Now, we have come to the end of the show, and what a panel, what a conversation, what an audience. Thank you so very much for choosing to be with us all the way from 6 p.m. till 7 p.m. And of course, Charlene Ruto, Anita Soina, and Brian Maina for being here and dropping a lot of golden gems in our Gold Conversation. Thank you so much, and keep up the good job that you are doing. We've come to the end of the show. We'll see you again tomorrow as we continue with our mission of learning from our farmers, appreciating our farmers, inducting and onboarding new farmers like you and I. Thank you for watching. My name is Violetta Ngina. Goodbye.